boardroom was dead quiet, except for the low hum of the projector. A dozen executives sat frozen, their pens hovering mid-air as the translator's voice filled the room. Flat, rehearsed, slightly off. The CEO's voice, sharp and cold, cut through it. "He said they'll consider the offer," she declared. But the janitor, mid-30s, white tired eyes, shirt sleeves rolled up, paused mid-sweep. He tilted his head, listening. Then, in a calm, even tone, he said, "No, that's not what he said. He said they'll accept if we fix our mistake." Every head turned. The translator's face went pale. And for the first time that morning, even the CEO stopped talking. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. Victoria Hale, 32, sharp-featured designer suit crisp as her reputation, narrowed her eyes at the man holding the mop. "Excuse me?" she said coldly. "Who are you to interrupt a meeting?" The translator looked insulted, clutching his papers. The executives exchanged glances, some snickering under their breath. Daniel Cross didn't flinch. His voice stayed calm, respectful. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to interrupt." But he didn't say they'd consider. He said they'd accept if we corrected the product specs. Laughter rippled through the boardroom. A young exec smirked. "Oh, come on, you're a janitor, man. Let the professionals handle this." But the visiting delegate, a middle-aged man from the Beijing branch, suddenly spoke up, directly to Daniel. The translator hesitated, confused. Without missing a beat, Daniel responded in fluent Mandarin, his tone natural and respectful. The entire room went silent. When he finished translating the man's words back to English, everyone stared. "He says," Daniel explained, "that he appreciates honesty and prefers to talk with someone who actually listens." The foreign partner stood, extended his hand toward Daniel, and smiled. "Good man," he said in accented English, shaking Daniel's hand firmly. Victoria blinked, speechless. "You speak Mandarin?" Daniel nodded slightly. "Worked overseas a lifetime ago." The meeting continued. But this time, Daniel was no longer invisible. Every time a nuance appeared, he quietly offered the right phrasing, helping both sides understand each other perfectly. By the end, the deal was saved. Laughter replaced tension, and a $10 million partnership was back on track. When everyone finally left, Victoria lingered by the door, still stunned. "You just saved a deal that took us 6 months to build," she said quietly. Daniel smiled faintly, leaning on his mop. "No, ma'am. You saved it. I just swept up the misunderstanding." She looked at him for a long moment, unsure whether to laugh or thank him. "What's your name again?" He nodded politely. "Daniel Cross, ma'am. Night shift janitor." And as she walked away, her heels echoing down the marble hall, Victoria found herself thinking for the first time in years. Maybe not everyone beneath her was meant to stay there. The next morning, the sky above Hale Dynamics shimmered gold through the glass walls of the skyscraper. Yet Daniel Cross walked through its lobby like a shadow. His boots were still damp from last night's rain. His mop bucket creaked softly as the wheels rolled over the marble. Everyone around him buzzed with chatter. News of the miraculous deal had already spread. "Did you hear? Some janitor saved the company yesterday," whispered one intern. "He spoke Mandarin, right? Like perfectly fluent," said another. Daniel heard every word, but kept his head down. He'd learned long ago that attention fades fast. People forget. He clocked in quietly, grabbed his cleaning cart, and headed toward the executive floor. The air up there always smelled different, like money and polished oak. But today, something else lingered too. Expectation. Victoria Hale was already in her glass office, her silhouette sharp against the city skyline. She noticed him through the reflection. "Mr. Cross," she called out, voice steady but less icy than before. "Step inside for a moment." Daniel froze mid-step. "Yes, ma'am." He parked his cart and entered, cap in hand. Victoria's desk was littered with reports, yet her focus was all on him. "You worked overseas?" she began, tapping a pen against her notepad. "Where exactly?" He hesitated. "Beijing, U.S. Army Interpreter Corps, 7 years." Her brows lifted slightly. "Army?" "Yes, ma'am." He gave a small nod. "Languages were my specialty. Mandarin, Russian, a bit of Pashto. But after my wife passed, I left the service. Needed something stable. Something near my daughter." The words hung in the air like something sacred and unspoken. For the first time, Victoria didn't see a janitor standing in front of her. She saw a father carrying his grief like armor. "How old is she?" Victoria asked quietly. 8. Emily. His voice softened as he spoke her name. "Smart kid. Smarter than I deserve. She wants to be an engineer, says she'll build robots so her old man doesn't have to clean floors anymore." A faint smile touched Victoria's lips. "Sounds like she takes after her father." He chuckled, shaking his head. "No, ma'am. She takes after her mother. Brave, stubborn, never backed down from anything." Victoria studied him a moment longer, her usual confidence replaced by something almost human. Curiosity. "You could have told someone about your background, Daniel. We have an international relations department. They could have used you." He looked down at his worn boots. "No one ever asked." Silence filled the office. Outside, the hum of the city was distant, almost peaceful. Finally, Victoria spoke again. "You realize the client specifically requested you for today's follow-up meeting?" Daniel blinked. "Me?" "Yes, he called this morning and said, 'I trust that man with the mop more than your translator.'" Her voice held a hint of amusement. "You made quite an impression." Daniel gave a small, humble shrug. Guess honesty still has value somewhere. That afternoon, the conference room was filled again. Same delegation, same executives. But the atmosphere was different. The translator was absent this time, replaced by Daniel, who wore a freshly pressed shirt Victoria's assistant had left on his locker. The CEO sat at the head of the table, composed and calm, but her eyes occasionally flicked toward him. She didn't know why she kept doing that. Maybe because for once, someone had shown integrity without expecting anything in return. And that unsettled her. The meeting began. Daniel translated effortlessly, bridging gaps between cultures and egos with precision and respect. The clients nodded often, clearly impressed. Then came the unexpected moment. The senior delegate leaned back in his chair and said in Mandarin, "Your company is strong, but its heart, that comes from him." He pointed to Daniel. Everyone looked confused, not understanding the language. Daniel translated honestly, his tone steady. The words hit Victoria harder than she expected. When the meeting ended, the delegates rose, shaking hands with everyone. But when they reached Daniel, they bowed slightly. "You're a good man," said their leader. "Your truth made this possible." After they left, the room erupted in applause. The executives were buzzing with energy, congratulating Victoria. Yet her gaze stayed fixed on Daniel. When the noise died down, she approached him quietly. You just helped finalize a $50 million contract. You understand what that means? He smiled faintly. I think it means you'll be very busy, ma'am. She folded her arms, searching his face. Why are you still doing this? Why stay a janitor? He sighed, looking down at the mop handle still clutched in his calloused hands. Because I needed time to figure out who I was without her, he said softly. My wife. We built everything together, our home, our plans. When she died, I didn't want promotions or titles. I just wanted to be somewhere quiet, somewhere I could still hear my daughter's laughter when I came home. Victoria didn't know what to say. She was a woman who thrived on ambition, numbers, and results. But this man reminded her that peace had a price she'd never paid. You know, he continued, smiling faintly, sometimes the hardest part isn't losing someone. It's trying to live well enough to make them proud. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. You've done more than that, Mr. Cross. He looked at her, confused. Ma'am, you reminded me of something I forgot. That leadership isn't about power. It's about people. He nodded politely, clearly ready to return to work. But before he could, she stopped him. Take tomorrow off, she said suddenly. You've earned it. He blinked, surprised. Are you sure? There's still the lobby floors and... She cut him off with a small smile. Let the rest of us handle the floors for once. Daniel chuckled quietly. Careful, ma'am. You might start a rebellion. As he left the room, Victoria watched him go, his posture humble, but his presence somehow larger than life. For the first time in her career, she wondered how many Daniels she'd walked past without ever really seeing. That night, Daniel arrived home to his small apartment in the suburbs. Emily ran into his arms, her backpack swinging. Dad, you're early. He grinned, hugging her tight. Miracle of the century, huh? She tilted her head. Did something good happen at work? He smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Yes, sweetheart, something real good. They sat by the window, eating leftover mac and cheese, watching the sunset fade. Emily leaned on his shoulder and whispered, You smell like floor wax. He laughed. That's the scent of hard work. But deep down, he knew something had changed, like a spark had been reignited inside him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid to find out. And across town, in her high-rise apartment, Victoria Hales stared at the skyline with a glass of wine in hand, thinking about the janitor who had corrected her translator, and somehow corrected her perspective too. The next week at Hale Dynamics felt different. For once, there was laughter echoing down the sleek hallways of glass and steel. Even the CEO's sharp stilettos didn't sound so intimidating. Word had spread fast about the janitor who spoke fluent Mandarin, who rescued a multi-million-dollar deal no one else could save. But while the entire office buzzed with gossip, Daniel Cross was back to quietly pushing his mop, same as always. He moved between conference rooms as though nothing had changed. Yet every nod from an executive, every small smile from employees who'd ignored him before, it all felt new. That morning, Victoria Hale stood by her office window overlooking the city. She had 3 missed calls from corporate partners and 1 from her father, the company's founder. His voicemail had been simple and cutting. You're finally leading like a Hale. Took you long enough. She should have felt proud. But all she could think about was Daniel's quiet voice saying, Would you have listened? There was something humbling about that question. It kept replaying in her mind, louder than any boardroom applause. Later that afternoon, she found Daniel cleaning near the company daycare on the first floor. He was kneeling, scrubbing marker doodles off a wall, humming softly to himself. A little girl with blonde curls sat nearby on a chair, drawing something with crayons. "Daddy, look!" the girl exclaimed, holding up her paper. "It's you." Daniel laughed softly. "Oh, wow. You even got the mop bucket right. Guess I'm officially famous?" The little girl giggled. "And this is your boss lady. She looks mean, right?" Victoria froze. She hadn't realized the girl was his daughter. Daniel turned, startled to see her there, color rushing to his face. "Emily," he said gently, "this is Miss Hale. You shouldn't—" Victoria smiled faintly and crouched down to Emily's level. "I've been called worse," she said softly. "That's a pretty good drawing." Emily grinned. "You're not mad?" "Not at all," Victoria said, smiling genuinely for the first time that week. "But maybe next time give me a smile in the picture, Emily laughed, nodding. "Okay, deal." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "Sorry, ma'am. She comes here after school sometimes. I didn't have anyone to watch her today." Victoria looked at him, really looked at him, and shook her head. "Don't apologize. She's welcome any time." The words surprised even her. She hadn't planned to say them, but somehow they felt right. 2 days later, the boardroom was filled again, this time for the official signing ceremony with the Beijing partners. Cameras flashed, executives lined up in their suits, and at the far end of the room stood Daniel, watching quietly, his uniform pressed, his daughter waiting just outside the door with a juice box in hand. The foreign delegate smiled warmly when he saw him. "Ah, the honest man," he said, clasping Daniel's hands in both of his. "You come. Sit." Daniel blinked, startled. "Sir, I'm just—" "No, just." The delegate smiled. "Without you, no deal. You belong at this table." Everyone looked to Victoria. She paused, then nodded. "He's right. Daniel, take a seat." The entire room shifted. The janitor, who had once mopped this very floor, now sat beside the CEO as they signed the most successful deal in company history. When the cameras clicked and the papers were exchanged, Victoria leaned toward Daniel and said quietly, "You realize this company owes you everything right now?" He smiled faintly. "I think you mean you owe your team." She shook her head. "No, Daniel. I owe you." That night, after the event, Victoria found herself walking toward the maintenance wing, a part of the building she'd never once visited. She found Daniel by the service elevator, folding up his uniform for the night. "I thought you'd gone home," she said softly. "Just about to." She hesitated, then handed him an envelope. "This is for you." He frowned, opening it carefully. Inside was a formal letter embossed with the Hale Dynamics seal. His eyes scanned the words, widening slowly. "Promotion, cultural liaison and translator. Full salary and housing allowance." He looked up, startled. "Ma'am, this can't be right." "It's right," she said firmly. "You've more than earned it." He exhaled slowly. "I don't know what to say." "Then don't," she said gently. "Just promise me one thing. Keep being exactly who you are. The company needs people like that more than it needs another degree or title." He nodded, emotion flickering behind his calm eyes. "Thank you. Not for the job, but for believing I was worth more than the mop." Victoria smiled softly. "No, Daniel. You were always worth more. I just finally noticed." The next day, the office cafeteria buzzed with a rare sense of unity. Even the kitchen staff clapped when Daniel walked by, wearing his new ID badge clipped to his clean shirt. Emily was by his side, proudly holding a small bouquet of daisies she'd picked herself. Victoria approached, smiling. "Hi, Emily. Those flowers are beautiful." "They're for Daddy," the little girl said proudly. "He said you gave him a big job." "I did," Victoria replied, crouching to meet her eyes. "But you know what? He gave me something too." Emily tilted her head. "What?" "A reminder that kindness still matters in places where people forget it." Emily smiled wide, then held out one flower. "Then this one's for you." Victoria blinked, taken aback, then accepted it. "Thank you, sweetheart." Daniel watched quietly, heart full. There was something sacred about that simple exchange. A child's innocent generosity bridging a gap between two worlds that had never been meant to touch. Later that evening, Daniel stood on the rooftop terrace overlooking the city lights. Victoria joined him, both silent for a while. "You know," she said finally, "I used to think success meant never showing weakness. But after meeting you, I realized it's about being strong enough to care." He glanced at her, smiling faintly. "Caring isn't weakness, ma'am. It's what keeps people going." She nodded. Maybe that's what I needed to learn. He looked out over the skyline, the glow of traffic lights reflecting in his tired but peaceful eyes. "We're all learning, ma'am. Every day." A breeze swept past them, carrying the faint sound of laughter from the street below. It felt like a good omen. Quiet, human, hopeful. "Tell me something," Victoria said after a pause. "If you could go back, change anything, would you?" Daniel thought for a long moment. "No," he said softly. "Losing her taught me how to live for others. If I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't be standing here now." She smiled. "You're a rare man, Daniel Cross." He shook his head. Just a father trying to make his daughter proud. A week later, a company-wide email went out with a photo attached. "Meet Daniel Cross. Proof that integrity still changes lives." And as employees read his story, something shifted. People began greeting the janitors, thanking the security guards, holding doors open for each other. Small kindnesses spread like wildfire through the building that had once been cold and corporate. Victoria stood by her office window one morning, watching the team below laughing together. She smiled to herself, whispering, "Guess he really did sweep more than floors." That evening, Daniel picked up Emily from school. She climbed onto his shoulders, laughing. "Daddy," she said, "you're famous now." He chuckled. "Nah, sweetheart. Just finally being seen." As the sun dipped behind the skyline, the man who once hid behind a mop walked into the golden light of redemption. Proof that sometimes the smallest act of courage and kindness can change everything.